Hello, everybody. I am Brian Leffler, contributing editor to Shacknews, and I am joined with my wide world of electronic sports co-hosts and our brand new community manager, Denny Von Doom. Of course, you know them, Rodney Conyers Jr. and Phil, the phenomenal EE Visu.
What up?
Thank you guys so much for being here. And this is our wide world of electronic sports E5 panel. We are going to be discussing esports just on a broader level. We got a couple of topics, but we'll be branching them out, and letting everybody get their opinions in. First up, I wanted to talk about esports becoming more legitimate, becoming more like professional sports. And a great example of that is the new LCS Players Association. This is a Players Association created by the players in the League Championship Series in order to ensure that their interests are served in upcoming tournaments. It looks like the tournament in Iceland, the mid-season invitational, didn't really go as planned as far as the players were concerned. It really didn't meet their expectations. And so because of that, and also just other issues that have been come up over the years, we've now have a new players association, just like in football, baseball, or any other professional sport. And I think this is a really cool. I think this is a really cool development, and I think that it was only inevitable for something like this to happen. I'll let you take it off or kick it off, Rodney. What do you think about this happening?
I think this is a really good thing for somebody like myself, Phil and Danny as well too. I forget that you come from a fighting game background as well. In fighting games, there's a lot of grassroots just love and lore, which is really great. I think that's like the biggest component that just games like those run off of. It keeps things perpetuating forward because everybody likes a good story. I feel like the double-edged sword to that, though, is that I've seen some tournaments that have treated the players less than favorable. I'll put it that way, and they will remain unnamed just for the sake of this company's integrity. But late payouts, net 30 turns into net 60, net 60 turns into net never. Okay, we've all been there. Or, you're promised one thing and you don't get it. Or, just weird things happen last second. And it's just nice to have an organization like this that are putting the players first. Because, yes, this is a community that, at least in competitive gaming, comprised of players and commentators and organizers and so many other key components. But when you really come down to it, people show up, people tune in to watch these players do what they do best, and that's perform at a top professional level. So we need organizations like this to treat them like the upstanding individuals that they are.
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything Rod said. I mean, and almost in a sense, you can say like some of the way you look at this stuff is like overdue. I guess is kind of a way to put it. So, I mean, it's another one of those situations where it seems like we're getting them more often, which I think is good. It's like it's not doing any harm; it's only doing good. Like that's kind of like where we want esports to be headed consistently, especially when we're talking about, like you said it there, Brian, like legitimizing everything involved in it, right?
Yeah, a players association is really a huge step towards legitimizing esports and making it more fair to everyone involved. Obviously, when you have large corporations that start getting involved in esports, you mentioned that it's kind of a grassroots thing, and esports kind of had to start as a grassroots a thing because nobody else really was interested or believed in it up until that point. And now, obviously, people believe we have large scale organizations and billionaires investing money into owning teams, and just all of these things that all of the money trading hands is now more reflective of professional sports. And it's not hard for the people who have the money invested to protect their interests. It's not going to be difficult for the corporations and the team owners to protect themselves. But the players, however, really need organizations like this. They need players associations to look out for themselves. I want to see what Denny has to say about this. What do you think, Denny?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a huge step. I mean, when it comes to professional sports and in terms of esports as well, I think it both legitimizes things, but it also means you're going to be bringing in more power players in the in between. those people look over those contracts for you. Make sure that you're not getting into some kind of predatory situation. Making sure that the practices are balanced and fair to the players overall who are dealing with these different companies, because of course, they're going to put themselves first in a lot of these situations. I think that's definitely really important, especially having more bargaining power is also important too. So yeah, big steps there. I'm happy to see it in that way.
Dude, my bad. This is not Discord. I didn't have push to mute. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
But I echo everything that Denny just said as well too. I think the very nature of, treating the players correctly will somehow trickle down to like these events, really upping their security. Because there's some interconnective tissue between like community members and then like them wanting to take that initial step into becoming the next, top player for tomorrow. And I think that also starts with, of course, making sure the players are safe. But like I said, that will trickle down into making sure these events are overall safe as well, too. We have all been to enough events in our time, whether they have been tournaments or conventions or whatever the case may be. And they are very loose in a lot of areas where they should not be loose. And I think, if we're just going to make sure that our players are safe, I think it really starts at a community level at these events as well. So, I mean, just some of the first things that come to mind. Wristbands for minors. If you aren't old enough to drink, you shouldn't be in this area. You shouldn't even be anywhere close to this. The drinking area should be very far removed from the rest of the convention itself. I've even noticed it at like anime conventions where like there's some room parties that are heavily monitored and you can't get in without a certain type of ID if you aren't old enough. So I think just like small little key components, right, that would really make for a better, just competitive player experience for the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this also leads the way for not only, since the LCS has shown that they can have a players association, obviously player unions could exist for any large scale team, esport, Valorant, Counter-Strike, any other MOBA, and even with fighting games, I think there's room for players associations or players unions to come up and just ensure that the tournaments have safeguards for everybody, have ways that it makes it fair for everyone participating. And like you said, guarantees that the people playing are taken care of, that they get paid in the end and they want, and they get an experience that makes them want to play again. We definitely don't need players that are going to be turned away from the esport just by going to a bad tournament or, having a bad experience, because that's just not going to help the growth. I think that a players association also really helps like I was saying, the people in charge, the people who are, the people who are changing money around and buying and selling these teams, basically. This is showing them that the players are completely capable of banding together and making sure that their interests are looked out for, and that, making sure that the tournament organizers and the companies in charge aren't going to be the ones, always profiting in the end.
And I hope that it would also lead to, more professionalism from, the sides when it comes to some of these agencies and other, in-betweens and how they handle the business, and also on the company end, making sure that they're ready PR wise, or, giving like the players what kind of options that are not necessarily as readily available right now. I think, more people pushing for that, as part of the association might be helpful. I'm also curious to see, if we'll see any pushback from any major companies on unions and those kind of things moving forward, because I mean, it's a different, especially when you go into international esports, there's all kind of different politics there.
Absolutely.
That comes into play. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, esports is huge all over the world, and in some countries, it definitely might not be looked favorably upon. I don't see China being, very kind to players associations just because of the way things are done over there. It's a very strict way of doing things, and it's either do it their way or face the consequences. I mean, we've seen people punished for all sorts of ridiculous things, and have their like sponsorships just removed outright over in China. We've reported that on the show previously. And yeah, Denny, you bring up a great point. The pushback might be interesting to see. I really hope that there isn't a lot of pushback, but inevitably there might be some. I also think that this really could go a long way into basically making esports just more, like you're saying, for the agencies and like the organizations that have sprung up in order to like facilitate, finding players and making sure that they get paid in the end and get matches and everything. This might make some of that a little obsolete. I know, like in Smash Brothers for a long time, it was really hard to make sure that you were going to get paid and be able
Hell
to.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
the CEO doesn't care.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
follow up with them. They're not gonna follow up with you. I mean, that's some fighting games, like, period. But definitely
Chasing them down.
definitely, yeah, exactly, man. Like, you have to send like a million emails. And then, like, the sad thing is, I've seen it, and I've seen this happen multiple times. It gets to the point where like an organizer is just straight up ignoring somebody whom you owe money. Like, they traveled to your event, they won money, who you owe money, and they have to like make a direct public tweet just to get like any kind of response. Like, you have to get put on blast. Like, why does it ever have to come to that point?
Yeah, that's sad. That's really sad.
Yeah, I think it's trash.
And I was going, so in some fighting game scenes like Smash, organizations have popped up, sponsors that will take players under their wing, be it, G2 or Cloud9 or TSM or anyone. They're now sponsoring fighting game community players, and, they're helping them make sure, like you were saying, they don't have to, go after the tournament organizers to get paid or whatever. The organization's going to do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody has the luxury of being sponsored or being taken under by an organization like that. There are hundreds of very, very good players out there who don't have a sponsorship, who don't have someone looking out for them like that. And I think a players association is really the next logical step. So we make sure everyone is looked out for, not just those who are fortunate enough to have a sponsor.
Right. And that way it's not just, the fakers and the Justin Wongs and the Daigos and the players like that who are, really reaping the entire benefits of being a sponsored player. I think, and this even just exceeds fighting games. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that some of these organizations look at these guys or gals or, whoever that are really good at their game, but they are, I don't know, stuck in Kansas City or stuck in like, Indiana, some like weird part of the United States. And they're like, us picking you up is doing you a favor. Those were definitely the vibes that I got like around 2016 and 17, where some of these big like celebrities were starting teams and picking up all these players, boom, boom, boom. Because all they see are numbers. They don't see the personality. They don't see the background. They don't see where these players come from. They're just like, you have a storyline. Investors like storylines. Let's pick these players up, so on and so forth. And I think, the Players Association will, just kind of help alleviate a lot of that weird gray area in between. Like, yes, I am a struggling esports competitive player of any sort. Yes, I would like to get picked up, but I don't want this to feel like you are doing me a favor. Okay. Like because a lot of times these teams, when you get to that level, they're approaching you like G2, Liquid, whatever, they're watching your results, they see what you're doing. They're reaching out to you. They're showing up to you at events, just like traditional sports. I got some basketball homies that have had coaches watch them since middle school. They're playing in college now. So it happens, but there has to be some sort of camaraderie in the middle. It can't just be, you're this struggling underground, I can help you go to the next level, but you got to do it my way or it's the highway type thing. Somebody has to be in there to protect these players.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. There's a lot of professionalism, aspects of professionalism, I think, that you see in, other forms of sports, that you have a player association, you can kind of transition more of that into the esports realm as well. I mean, if you want to have, say professional, press events or, things that you could maybe push to advertisers, that means also being professional, paying people on time, getting them to those events, those kind of things, and having things start on time. If you want to have like commercial and level like advertising, those kind of things trickle down, that means things have to be ran to a professional level.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't said it any better. And hopefully this kind of development, the LCS Players Association, will inspire other players, other communities to try out the same thing. And hopefully that will inspire a much more fair and organized format for all of esports going forward. And yeah, it just, like Phil was saying, it just helps everybody. And there definitely could be some pushback there. I could see some pushback coming from the higher ups and everyone, the people who are really holding on to the bag and all of this. But it's inevitable. It's got to happen. These people need to be looked out for. And speaking of looking out for the little guy, in face of the big guy, how do you guys feel about Evo being taken over by Sony? I mean, this is like obviously one of the hugest stories in esports right now, and it's really shaping esports as we see it, especially for the fighting game community. With fighting game communities being so ingrained in grassroots, startups, and making sure that everything is run by the community for the community, with a company like Sony coming in and taking Evo, which was at its core a grassroots tournament, now making it basically a PlayStation tournament.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this? This is really crazy.
I think I'm a little torn, because the grassroots person in me is like, damn, am I going to be able to see some of my other favorite games at that top level? Like, I like Street Fighter. I don't love it. But like, also the business person in me is like, this kind of just makes sense. Like, the interconnected tissue is always there. Sony, of course, is just a juggernaut of a company. Evo, I love Evo. I really love CEO and Combo Breaker to death. But of course, Evo is the one in that trinity. And so, just looking at, how much they push, Street Fighter, and how Street Fighter, of course, is Capcom exclusive and just, or Sony exclusive, excuse me. That was kind of the direction I feel like they were going to go in anyway. It's a little unfortunate, because I don't know how they're going to handle the other games at that top professional level now. I would expect, again, maybe Killer Instinct was never going to be ran, like, of course, top 8 finals Sunday evening at Evo, but can we see it now in the community area? Like, do we see some of our other favorite titles now over there? Like, how does this kind of work? I know they're working with a really strong team, but I think it raises more questions than they are probably available to answer. I don't know. I'm sure they've signed some weird contracts and they can't say too much, but I'd like some more answers on their end.
This is great for Evo. They should be on their hands and knees. Do you know the last thing I heard about Evo was Mr. Wizard and his for lack of a shenanigans? Okay, this tournament series is lucky that they're still standing, and they have like a breath of fresh air, and Sony breathe life back into you. You should feel blessed. I mean, seriously, I know so many people are just written off Evo simply because of Mr. Wizard's attachment to it, period. Like, that's all it takes with sometimes, that's all it takes. So the fact that Sony is like getting in there and saying, you know what, we got the right kind of people around. We do enjoy the fighting game community in general. We'll go ahead and give you guys a hand, and we'll show you what good PR can do for an event that clearly needs some damn help. So I think it's great.
Yeah. I mean, they monopolized so well, because there was always like the age-old debate, like, what's more prestigious? And as somebody who comes from Smash and like, that type of background, like, this is obviously something I've never had to worry about, but what is more prestigious, being the Evo champion or being the Capcom Pro Tour champion for the year? But now, since they are basically in control of both, it's like, it just, they're just grabbing all the best parts and pieces of fighting games, specifically the fighting game genre Street Fighter, and they are just taking it and they're running with it. But I agree, Phil, they definitely needed this, because look, anybody who knows me knows I'm Team Jabali and Rick, like, just, through in and out. And so I'm like, yo, this is CEO's chance to just take it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've always felt like Jabali's the best fighting game tournament organizer on the planet. And with Evo kind of, falling off to the wayside the way they did last summer or spring or whenever it was, I'm like, CEO to me was always more of an enjoyable experience. My toes are in the sand on the beach. Okay. I'm in Florida. Well, that, of course, that comes with its own set of issues, but I'm in Florida with good people, hanging out, having fun. And of course, Combo Breaker, I'm in Chicago, eating deep dish lasagna pie pizza, whatever you want to call it. So I'm like, I'm having way more fun.
All right, not lasagna pie.
I'm sorry, I had to. Are you from Chicago, Denny? My bad.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
With the deep
sorry.
dish slander.
Hey, it got 8, so, but you get where I'm coming from, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Though I think that considering where we were a year ago with Evo, it's definitely been interesting seeing how things have transitioned with Sony being involved. I mean, there's definitely going to be a lot of change involved there too. But I think Evo's always kind of had that. It's been grassroots to a certain extent, sure, but it's had that feeling of like the grand scale of it. Like you're on the world stage in a way. You have so people traveling from everywhere for the event, and of course that's true of other events. I'm a huge fan of Combo Breaker. Obviously, I've been going since this UFGT, 10 years ago. So there's plenty of history there too. But I do think that with Sony getting involved, it's really smart for them business wise. I mean, you have so many titles who obviously Japanese based games have majority been on PlayStation consoles. And primarily played or in tournament standard on PlayStation consoles as well. So that's a big factor. You have a big game like Street Fighter, which will probably be getting another, sequel in a few years. So lining yourself up with both the Pro Tour and with Evo Tournament Series and stuff like Guilty Gear, King of Fighters, all very Sony heavy games. I think that's a smart move on their part, because when you have a tournament standard set with say a PS5 or a PS4, you're going to be in every tournament circuit, around the country, basically leading into Evo. So I mean, Microsoft having bought Smash GG for tournament organizing, but not really pushing any new fighting game titles out there, and also not really pushing anything tournament series wise is rough in comparison. Like Sony, even before Evo, they were pushing MK11, circuit stuff and Soul Calibur and stuff like that on their own channels, and it was doing pretty well. So they're clearly investing the money into fighting games moving forward because they see the potential there. Evo makes sense.
It's interesting you bring up Microsoft buying Smash GG and not really doing anything with it other than, keeping it online. I wonder if, do any of you think that this move where Sony, purchasing Evo, creating a new PlayStation tournament series leading up into what we would know as the traditional Evo tournament, do you think this might lead the way for any other companies to try to copy their lead and try to buy a tournament series of their own? I could see, Microsoft could easily be poised to purchase a tournament series and use that to push Killer Instinct, other games that are also on the Xbox platform. And we could even see, dueling tournaments with dueling platforms of choice. I think that would be interesting. Now, I'm not saying Microsoft is going to go out and do this. It's a huge long shot. But would you like to see something like that?
I'd love to personally. I mean, you say a huge long shot. I'd say the same thing with this Sony Evo acquisition. Who the hell saw that coming? That was just out of left field. So I think it'd be fantastic. Can you imagine like something like a combo breaker or a CEO like presented by like Microsoft, or if hell froze over Nintendo, like something like that? Like that would be a dope thing, I think, to attach. I mean, one, you're tackling in a realm that already exists. It's been around for a long time, like esports, competitive games. People like your game, they want to play it competitively. You're embracing that. You could be introducing like a new audience to that on, like, it could go both ways, which I think is beneficial to the competitive and the casual side of things, depending on how it's marketed. Like I couldn't see a negative with this personally. Like the only thing I would think like could suck is if like over regulated with some rules, you know what I mean? Like, oh, no trash talking period, some stuff like that. But I would think like they have like enough feedback to know like there's going to be trash talk at a competitive fighting game tournament, just like you would see at a playoff basketball game, a football game. Like that's just how it is. Nothing like, obviously, like, no slurs or anything like that, but just some friendly, there's some friendly shit talk at the end of the day,
Yeah,
I think
that kind of, I'm with you, Phil. It goes without saying. I've always drawn the comparison between like, basketball and football trash talks, like traditional FGC stuff. So it's there. Especially like when I watched a CEO a couple years ago and I see like Yipes and, the gang in the front row watching Jabali and everybody wrestle, and they're just like all hype. And I'm just like, it's there. It's the same thing. But I think if like Microsoft bought another tournament series, Namely, it would have to be like either Combo Breaker or CEO. Those are the only other two that are anywhere close to Evo. I guess you could maybe argue Canada Cup too, depending on your experience there. But the only thing you would really lose would just be Street Fighter. I think, you know, you would gain, of course, Killer Instinct. Dragon Ball FighterZ is on both platforms. Tekken's on both platforms. Mortal Kombat, you know, that's another one too that I think sometimes people forget about, or just really all the NetherRealm games are on both consoles as well. I guess you would maybe run into the issue of like some of the people who prefer it more on, you know, PlayStation because of the controller thing. But of course, there are universal adapter pieces to where we can use this controller on that system. And then there's a large majority of the people in the fighting game community, like Danny was bringing up before we went on air, that use fight sticks. So there's a lot of options. You would just unfortunately lose the Capcom games, which when I look at like the infrastructure of fighting games in general, Street Fighter, just in general, 3, Marvel versus Capcom, anything, you know, X-Men versus Street Fighter, those are like key components, key ingredients to making the fighting game community what it is today. Don't know if we can lose those at this level, but that's why I don't call those shots.
I feel like Microsoft would be like the only, they'd be the only way that there'd be like some kind of PC play in a tournament. Like Sony would never attempt to put PC play into any kind of tournament space, even if it was just like, you know, on stage. I feel like Microsoft would actually probably try and push for that for some games.
Yeah, Microsoft could easily try to push for like a cross-play, you know, showing the cross-play between PC and Xbox in certain fighting games. And you're right, Denny, Microsoft is the only company that would try to do something like that. I like the point that Rodney made. Do you think you could run a legitimate large-scale fighting game tournament with, you know, with clout and prestige behind it that doesn't have Capcom?
And so in a perfect world for me, I like Street Fighter for what it is to the community. The only one I enjoy watching really is like 3 and like Ultra Street Fighter 4. 5 is just, it is what it is. I just feel like I personally could do without some of the titles, but I know that that's not how that works. You can't have this one without having the community game room at Evo and Combo Breaker filled with all the other ones. You know what I mean? You lose players like Brad. I'm sure like people like Justin Wong and Daigo would jump in other brackets, but you know, they're there for Street Fighter predominantly. So I'm just thinking of like the names like Smug, Punked. I'm just thinking of like just these prominent names that you need at these events. You lose them. And I just don't know if they're willing to take that risk.
I think it's because they, you know, Capcom Cup is so established now. And those are all major spots on, you know, the tour. But it's hard to remove that and still get the same level of international travel and buzz because people are coming there for those tours. You know, if it's like you're like, you know, say CEO is like the last ditch effort before, you know, Combo Breaker for certain stuff, you know, or like, you know, for different other tournaments, if you missed out on the chance to get points, you're forced to go to the other tournament to make up for that, you know. And I think that's kind of where it balances out, getting more of that world travel involved. And I don't know if any other, you know, titles are established in that way. I mean, Tekken's pretty big, but yeah, I don't think anything's pushing on the Capcom level as far as the world travel push.
Man, Tekken after, and I'm pretty sure you were at the last Combo Breaker as well. After what I've seen at Tekken Top 8, I'm like, oh, Tekken is like, it might not be as established as Street Fighter is. Like, I mean, they've both been around for a very long time, but of course, Street Fighter is Street Fighter. They set the template. But Tekken, they're just those cool guys in class. Like, they're just the cool kids. Like, you know, when you watch that Top 8, when you watch those moves, the slow motions, the animations, the fact that it's like the only 3D fighter in most Top 8s at events like that, it's like, as the Tekken player deep down within me, the 10-year-old Tekken lover, I'm like, I want to see an event with that in Street Fighter spot. But again, I know that that's a big financial, just, you know, whatever gamble, if you want to call it. And I just don't know if it's worth it. I'd love to see it, though. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Rodney and Phil, while you're here, obviously, I have to talk about the elephant in the room, with Evo being a Sony event and with this PlayStation series now announced leading up to Evo. It's looking less likely, just less and less likely every day that Smash Brothers is going to be part of Evo. Do you think Smash World Tour could eventually become the new Evo of Smash, basically like the like end all be all tournament that you would want to win, basically cementing you as the world champion of Smash? And would you want Nintendo to buy Smash World Tour?
Phil, I'll let you take this one because you've worked with Nintendo.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that, like, if you look at the Smash World Tour, just the fact that you have to do the qualifiers and then like the regionals and then there's that final bracket, like it's basically built up so it's like an NBA season, right? You got your regular season, then your playoffs, then your championship game. So there's way more that goes into winning the World Tour than goes into winning Evo. You know what I mean? Like Evo's like a good like summer finale type thing almost, but it doesn't have the same like build up. So I think a Smash World Tour, to me, that title would be more than the Evo title. That's just my opinion, just how it's structured. As far as Nintendo getting involved in it, that is actually, believe it or not, I would be okay with that because of the fact that I've worked with Nintendo before and I know like actually like what they actually think. Like I'm not gonna name any names, but the the people I've spoken to like on the competitive side and Nintendo are like, yeah, if let's just hypothetically say, like, yeah, we're invested in a tournament, like we're like making our own thing, like for esports or whatever. We would follow the traditional model for that. So that means like no crazy stages, no items, no assist trophies, right? So because like I've actually heard that from the horse's mouth, like I would feel comfortable with them coming because like a lot of those guys are actually mad cool. Like people don't realize like a lot of the times when like those decisions are casted down to keep Smash out of some stuff, it's because of like Nintendo Japan. Nintendo America, though, if those are the guys who are in charge of something, those guys are all chill. Like they understand like what people want to see from a competitive standpoint, and they'd be about it.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 because if Nintendo gets involved, I'd be out of a job. So there's that.
No.
Yeah, I'd be out of a job. But I think just using myself, I guess, as a sacrificial lamb, if it meant like the betterment of the community, like there are other avenues, of course, I could go down just personally. I mean, of course, I got my good friends here at Shacknews. We could still talk gaming. We still do the stimulus games. So like I would never be without, competitive gaming. But that's neither here nor there. But I do think I'd like to see Nintendo get involved. Since I've been in the community, there's always been this weird relationship between Smash and fighting games where like, here's Genesis, and like we did Street Fighter one year at Genesis, and it just didn't quite hit like how Smash at Combo Breaker, Smash at CEO hit. So like both parties are trying, but I just think at this point, with us always being grassroots and never getting that like corporate, that that top business level shot, we just have enough events to where we can do our own thing. Like just off the top of my head, in the month of January, we have Let's Make Big Moves in New York, which is historically for Smash a really big accomplishment because we haven't had like anything close to a major in the tri-state area, let alone New York, in about a decade, really. Glitch in Phil's original backyard, and then we have Genesis, Frostbite, all types of events. I think we have enough prestigious events on our end to, I'm not saying we need to pull out of the fighting game, events. By all means, if we have a home already in Combo Breaker and CEO and Evo, stay there. Or if we do come back to Evo. But I think we have enough events to where we can make ourselves just as happy. I would maybe compare Smash World Tour maybe more to like the Capcom Pro Tour as opposed to Evo. But I still think that Smashers would be okay at the end of the day.
That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Denny.
Yeah, I mean, as someone on the outside looking in, because I'm not a Smasher, I always kind of saw like the relationship kind of like, like cousins in a way. And it felt like Evo, as in terms of tournament, I always just thought that they went heavily into Smash because it drives up numbers and the money. Like it was always like those two factors. And when you're running something that's more organizational and grassroots in comparison to Sony, you can just throw money at anything. I think that they had more reason to get Smash involved on a major scale with their tournament, the tournament series. Whereas Sony, on the other hand, it's basically just an extended PR for them.
Yeah, Sony doesn't really have any incentive to bring Smash back to Evo. It's like you were saying. I agree with you. I think Smash's like, surgence in Evo. Like it's huge come up in all of the press that it was getting, and the prestige was really, just because Evo wanted those player numbers. I mean, it's the biggest fighting game tournament in the world for every other fighting game. So when they started including Smash Melee and Smash Ultimate and all of that, it just brought in thousands of extra signups. And you can't deny a game that's going to give you thousands of extra signups, because that's thousands of extra entry fees, thousands of more dollars going into the pool.
And you can tilt those numbers to advertisers and everything else as well.
Exactly. So when Evo had corporate sponsors, but was not a corporate run event, yes, they absolutely needed those numbers. Those numbers looked very good to the corporate sponsors, looked very good to the advertisers. But Sony doesn't need any of that. They want the PR to be Sony focused going from here forward. I don't think they want to really give a platform to Nintendo or to Smash Brothers. And I like how, Phil, you likened Smash World Tour more to the Capcom Pro Tour than to Evo, or maybe it was just that's a really good point, because Rodney, that's a very good analogy. It is more like the Capcom Pro Tour, and maybe a Capcom Pro Tour title now, like you're saying, is a little more prestigious than the Evo title, just because you have to go through all of the qualifiers, the regionals. You got to build up the points, you got to make it to the end, and then you have to win the whole thing. And not to say that Evo isn't a difficult tournament to win. It's one of the most difficult tournaments to win, just because of the sheer number of people, the sheer size of the bracket. But I hopefully I hope that this move of Sony purchasing Evo and getting into a corporate run tournament does bring an opportunity for Nintendo or for Microsoft to really step up, and just make it known that Sony isn't the only company that could do something like this. Other people could do something like this as well.
No doubt. Lines are just kind of drawn in the sand right now. I think, when you see business at that level, they're speaking a very different language than like just, of course, verbally communicating. It's like, hey, did you see that thing that Sony just did? Yeah, they just bought Evo. Boom, lines drawn in the sand. Like, without even having to discuss it with them, you already know now what's going on. And, of course, Nintendo and Sony have a very strange relationship as it is anyway. Like, for most people, obviously, who don't know, Nintendo and Sony are kind of, Sony would not exist without Nintendo, but of course, Sony, of course, has made a wonderful name and, of course, company and corporation for themselves since then. But same with Microsoft as well. I'm sure that they have something cooking up. Nintendo is kind of taking the collegiate approach, where now Splatoon and Smash are now being more recognized as actual pre-collegiate high school esports, which I think is super dope as somebody who comes from an educational background. It's still not quite where we'd like it to be, but I think this is a positive step in the right direction. And I think Nintendo, they just have always traditionally done this. They just kind of carve their own lane. Like, okay, this company, Sega's doing this, Microsoft's doing this, Sony's doing this. We're just going to keep doing us. And because of that, they've had so much power within these last so many years, where other prominent fighting game organizations like Red Bull, who has a very heavy hand in events like a CEO, most notably, have approached Nintendo for stuff. And Nintendo has the power just to be like, nah, we're not doing that. Like, we know it'd be a big deal. Same with Twitch. Twitch is like, let's throw some money at a circuit. Let's do it. Nintendo's like, yeah, we'll entertain the idea. And then you get left on red for months, and then somebody else does whatever, and they just forget about it again. So because of Nintendo's like exclusiveness over the last, basically 30 years, they can make their own plays.
Yeah. So we're coming up towards the end of the panel. I just want to wrap up by getting everybody's thoughts on where you would like to see esports go, where you would like to see esports head. Obviously, I am of the opinion, and I think we all are, that I just want to see esports become an accepted mainstream pastime, just as much as any regular sport, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, you name it, tennis, it doesn't matter what it is. I would just like to see esports get that mainstream acceptance. And it's definitely getting closer. It's getting way closer. with things like the Fortnite World Tour, becoming mainstream press, being covered in like stuff like on CNN and Forbes and whatnot. And I just really want, I just want esports to be seen as a viable professional career, like it is in some Eastern countries. I want that over here in the West, and I just want to see what do you guys hope for the future of esports?
Well, I mean, honestly, that whole acceptable pastime thing is definitely something I can get behind. I just wish it would be like, I just want it to be seen as like legitimate competition. Like, it's not, you're not on a field, you're not on a court, at least you can be virtually, but you know what I mean. But it's still like, it requires like so much like mental fortitude and just like practice to like achieve a lot of success. And these are a lot like tournaments you're just playing for like a couple $100 like it used to be back in the day. Like we got, $1 million prize pools for some of these things, depending on, what you're in. So, it would be nice to see it like treated a little bit more seriously. I love the fact that I've seen people tweet about this, like their colleges offer like an esports course and stuff like that. I think that's pretty sick. That Nintendo thing that got announced with like collegiate sports, stuff like that. Like it's all like slow growth and it's trickling down, hopefully, and they'll create, consistency from there. But yeah, I just want, esports to be respected for what it is, like legitimate, difficult competition that you get rewarded for the work you put in. And I think that's pretty damn cool. So I just want kind of everybody to be able to embrace and understand that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the relationship between like these companies who make these games and like the esports community kind of come together a little bit better. Because when I look at examples like Fortnite or games like League of Legends, I'm like, these games were built and bred to do this. Overwatch, you know what I'm saying? We're like, maybe some of the other games, like particularly in fighting games, existed before esports did. So like trying to, bring those two worlds together to collide in the middle might be a little bit more difficult. But, if there are any companies or organizers, watching this, if you're going to make a game, like find out where the community, that you're about to drop your game and find out where they sit, find out how they operate, and, plan accordingly. Don't just, drop a 3-button fighter in a community where like people like 12 buttons. Like obviously somebody's going to be upset, a lot of somebody. So that relationship, I'd like to see it mended and just treated a little bit better.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I would like to see esports, like you mentioned, Rodney, a lot more communication between both the companies making the games and the actual players, and just like the process of a game's lifespan, like just more of that connectivity and communication. Obviously, money is a big factor. I'd like to see that continue to be something that grows into different professional aspects as well, of how get more investors, and normalizing just what esports is overall is just something I think I want people to feel like they can look up to different esports stars, those kind of things. It's the same way they do with other sports, and it's something that they look forward to seeing more of that transition into other platforms and avenues, more televised events. Because the esports and especially in the FGC, there's a lot of diversity there that is awesome. And I think it would be even better to see the storytelling, on major like television events and those kind of things. With like even moving into like pay-per-view type stuff, would be huge for sure. I'd be into it.
Pay-per-view fighting game tournament or esports tournament, that is really the dream. I mean, if we could get to that kind of level, that would be huge.
Exhibitions, yeah, like the same way you can get Floyd and Logan Paul, whatever his name is, selling out. Get your top Evo players, or get Tokido from Japan to come through, showdown with Justin Wong or something.
Daigo versus Jay Wong, the rematch or whatever. Yeah, in Third Strike. See, look, Rodney, you'd pay money for that, wouldn't you?
I'd pay a whole bunch of money for that. I would cancel all my OnlyFans subscriptions just to watch that for sure.
Okay. Put that money out, and then Twitch is like, I want exclusive rights to that. And the next thing you know.
Definitely. And the data is already there too, because, looking at the stream numbers for a lot of these top eights, I mean, they're breaking like 100K, 200K. So like, you know, the numbers, the metrics are there. It's just who's going to take that financial and economical jump. I'm ready. My pockets are ready for this.
One last thing, I do also want to say that I hope that the esports also starts to, treat the people behind the scenes well, and people give them more, credit for what they do. I mean, tournament organizers are so thankless overall. Like the amount of stuff you have to deal with individual tournaments, especially on a larger scale, between like the brackets being screwed up or something else going crazy. And then you have your production teams and commentary. There's so many moving pieces to, any esports event behind the scenes that people just don't really even know about. Just more acknowledgement of that side of things, I think, would go a long way towards empathy towards those people as well.
Yeah, that's really good that you mentioned that, Denny. I absolutely agree. I think that the background players in esports, not necessarily the people playing the game, the people running the tournament, or the people, paying the players, but just the people who are in the trenches, the people who like are commentating and calling the plays, the people who are on the audiovisual side and making sure that the streams get out, clean and crisp, and make sure everything stays up. The people who are, involved in all of the public relations and the marketing and everything. These people have really been affected by the recent pandemic, and I think more than anybody, really. Like, obviously the players have been affected, but esports as a whole has really been affected by this. And yeah, those people deserve so much recognition.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
More.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really want to I want to say that I really would like to see not only esports grow into, like we were saying, a more accepted and recognized profession, but really just grow into the way people, see competitive multiplayer games. It's really been amazing to watch the industry, like you were saying, grow from grassroots fighting game tournaments to larger scale majors, I guess you could call, that are hosted around the country, to these large international tournaments that bring people around from all around the world. This is kind of stuff that I just really didn't think would be happening when I was a kid. When I was in the arcade, sheepishly putting my quarter up there, just in the line, just waiting to get my butt kicked. I just never really thought it would come to where we are. And the future just holds so much promise, really, for esports. And I know you guys are making that future happen right now with the Smash World Tour and stuff like that. Like these are the kinds of tournaments that are really changing the shape of esports. So yeah, if you guys just have any other closing thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Well, I think, though, just to touch on the World Tour one more time, I think it's great to see how much impact it's already having. And keep in mind, like we were relegated to having to run this online for the qualifiers simply because of what took place with the whole COVID and pandemic. And obviously it's great to see things are improving, but still the show had to kind of go on. But I'm glad like it's been still so well received and people are so excited, and like the next portions will be conducted offline and kind of get back on track to what this really could mean for the community. Because when this was first announced, it was everybody like lost their shit, and for good reason. Like this is this is definitely like something that's been talked about and teased, and there was like concepts, with Twitch and Red Bull involved at one point, but finally, like, VG and Smash kind of took it into their own hands and just put together something that I think everybody can be excited for. And I hope every kind of like competitive fighting game gets like a model like this, a dope kind of like a dope tour that culminates in like one sick event at the end of it, like Capcom does. Obviously, they were like the people who kind of gave us this model, and I'm glad Smash at least embraced it.
Yeah, shout out to Skullgirls. Yeah, they had the Skullgirls tour. I think it did it in Combo Breaker as well. It was similar to that. So, and it definitely brought new players in from all over the place too. My final thoughts. One thing I would say is that if we're going to move into more professional esports, it also means hiring people to handle professional streams. Because a lot of times when I bring in, people that may not be necessarily into esports and like fighting game stuff, the chat is some of the worst things I've ever seen in an online space. There needs to be more moderation and just overall care put into how presenting those kind of things goes in the long term, because you can't just tell people like just put things full screen and expect that they just fly for people that may not necessarily know how things go in the stream chats. So I think like having more of that kind of side of things from a professional standpoint will really help bring in new audiences for major esports and those kind of things. Because I definitely have had times where I've recommended stuff to people when they're like, man, that chat was on another level, and then they just close out. They're not coming back to that.
Yeah. I pretty much echo both, statements from both Denny and Phil. I think esports is right now kind of still looked as like a one-off thing, but when in reality, it's more of a lifestyle. And I like the fact that, we're getting like gamer, not just attire now, but like people are making gamer food and energy drinks and, hand warmers and gamer goose. You can grip the controllers better and all types of stuff. So I just think it's the next big thing. It's the next lifestyle. It's the next sort of, we've all seen the weird gamer bed where you look like you're kind of hooked into the matrix and there's the TV here and the weird stuff all around. I mean, as funny as that is, in about 10 years, that's probably going to be a societal norm in most places for people who game all the time. But I'd like to see us just keep moving forward to that, more than anything else. If we can keep showing the rest of the world that it is a lifestyle, not just like this weird hobby that makes money or whatever, I think it'll make for a better tomorrow.
Absolutely well said from everybody. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for our Wide World of Electronic Sports E5 panel. Thank you so much to Rodney Conyers Jr. for being here. Thank you, Phil, also as well for being here, my regular WWES co-host. And thank you so much, Denny, for joining us for this panel, our new community manager. It was great having you. I'm sure this is not the last time you are going to be involved in a Wide World of Esports production. So, we absolutely look forward to having you again.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure I'll be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I've been Brian Leffler, contributing editor for Shacknews, of course. And thank you again for watching.